to hear an interesting, fascinating conversation from two, I would call them productivity gurus, who are going to share all kinds of tips and tricks for you about how to keep your mind wrapped around what you're doing, how to manage all your stuff, how to take care of yourself when you're in the middle of a lockdown. And I've heard that Bulgaria has gone through a significant lockdown until December 21st. That's true of several states in the United States as well. So this conversation series is really timely because a lot of us are going back into more stay-at-home time, less ability to go out. This is your out in the world experience here at Insight as we bring to you these conversations for the next several weeks. So come on in, get comfortable, make sure you have like a glass of water, everything you need. Maybe you have a few nuts on hand in case you get hungry so you can stay engaged and listening to this whole conversation over the next hour. And yes, I see many of you are putting in where you're from into the chat. So Wolfgang from München, Germany, Deutschland. Hello, so nice to see you, Wolfgang. And who else do we have? Gail from Boston. And oh God, it's going so fast. We have Vancouver, Duluth, Minnesota, Houston, Florida, Sophia. We have Derbyshire, England. I just finished watching The Crown. Oh my God, it blew my mind out. Ontario, Canada. We have lots of people from Europe, New York City. That almost feels like a different country sometimes, doesn't it? Newburyport, Mesa, Arizona, Greece, Israel. How wonderful, how wonderful. Oh, this is incredible. Chihuahua, Mexico, Varna, Bulgaria. Everyone is here.
Nobody has anything to do.
Joey Hubbard's in the house. So if we're about ready to get started, I think we have around 200 people in the room. So this is very exciting. I'm happy to be supporting this event. Rosie, do you want to once again talk about switching to the Bulgarian channel so everyone who's in the room knows to do that?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Rosie.
Добър вечер, говорят български. Долу има една икона или не знам къде се намира при вас, може да е горе или отстрани, пише Translation, натиснете я и там вече има канал Bulgarian. Така че натиснете го и ще чувате в ефир превод на Петя Савова. Тази вечер тя е с нас. Приятен семинар.
Thank you. To kick this off real quickly, I saw a very funny cartoon. They said, Zoom is like an old-fashioned seance, and it showed all these people sitting around a table with a crystal ball, and someone saying, Steve, we can't hear you. Jane, reveal yourself to us. So it kind of feels that way sometimes.
Say something so we know you're there.
Say something so we know you're there. Can you hear me now? We can't hear you. You're on mute. You're on mute. So
I know.
It's my pleasure to introduce who's going to be speaking today. I am going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm sure that Joey and Peter have a lot they want to share, but every once in a while, if there's an opportunity, I'll take one of your questions and head it their way. So Peter Felsmann, many of you know him. He's been an Insight facilitator for years. He's traveled the globe. He's a productivity expert. He's done work with Ariana Huffington in Thrive. He has worked with in different countries. He really understands cultural differences and the challenges people have when they're trying to get their work done and how to make those shifts. So he's going to be here. And then we also have the CEO of Insight, who runs all of the training, oversees Thrive Global Training. And he's going to be here. I've known him since forever, it seems like. I think I did teen trainings with him. I've done adult trainings with him. We've done Insight 4 together. So he's a longtime friend and comrade. And Peter also, we've done some work together. So I feel like I'm with my friends. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter and Joey to lead this incredibly dynamic and interesting conversation on productivity. So take it away. And I think, Roger, why don't you unspotlight me and then respotlight me so I'm at the bottom, because I want these two guys side by side. If you want to spotlight me, or you don't have to.
Wait a second, because no translation.
Oh, I'm talking too fast. I'll slow down.
So Rosie, are you translating?
Petya is.
Oh, good.
No, Petya is.
We'd be in trouble if Rosie was translating. I was going to say, we might as well stop now. Okay.
Now we can, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get started.
How you doing, brother man? Thank you, Leslie, for that warm introduction.
Yeah, sweetheart. Leslie's our old time. We call him Boone Coon, which is like close buddy back in the day. We would call it Boone Coon.
I'm sorry.
I'm a Boone Coonette. Boone Coonette.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Roger need to unmute Petya. She cannot.
Okay, Roger, can you unmute Petya? Yep. And then mute Rossi. That would be helpful. Mute Rossi and unmute Petya.
Also, my understanding is we're not taking sharing. This is a conversation between the two of you. And if you have a question, you put it in the chat.
We'll take it later.
So it's not raise your hands to share. Put your questions into the chat. And I may need, Rosie, for you to translate some of the Bulgarian questions so we can be sure to get Bulgarians included.
Right.
Yeah, good call. It's good to see you, buddy.
Hey, man. It's been a while. It's been a while. Joey and I are very close friends. He's the godfather to my son. And it's been over a year since we've been able to hang out in person. So it's been...
Which we do regularly as just part of our, we call it our rejuvenating recharge practices, get together with each other and just hang out. So,
which is actually one of the keys of productivity, in my opinion, you know, is hang out with people that lift your energy and that, you know, just invest. It's an investment in relationships. I remember a conversation with Leslie many, many years ago. So I don't want to say how many years ago, a lot of years ago, you know, how relationships require an investment. It's like taking care of a garden, you know. Mm-hmm. So, but, you know, one of my favorite gardens to hang out in, yeah. With, you know. Yeah.
We'll do it soon.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit. Let me give you a little bit of brain science on this. And then Peter and I will just kind of riff on some of what we know in this field. There's two things. So in my work with Thrive, we spent a lot of time, there's a woman who named Dr. Michelle Williams. She is the dean at the Harvard Public School of Health. And we've talked quite a bit with her, and we've talked with a woman named Dr. Leanne Williams, who's at Stanford
Health,
around what is happening in terms of the brain and what's happening in terms of public health right now. And there are two things to be aware of. When you think about the different regions of the brain, and the central executive network is the part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. It is, in essence, the strategic part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that is like a battery. And when we sleep at night, it recharges. There are two things, and by the way, it's the part of our brain we want to be most active, most functional, because when we're in that place, emotional regulations, decisions, problem solving, creativity, innovation, all of that increases, okay? But there are two things that tax that part of our brain. One is uncertainty. So when we have periods of uncertainty, it literally begins to tax that part of our brain, meaning that if it's a battery, it's discharging by not knowing our future. And we're in a period of uncertainty. The second thing that really taxes the prefrontal cortex is looking at screens. When we look at screens, it literally is like discharging our battery as well. So those two things, when our prefrontal cortex is discharged, our ability to focus, our ability to pay attention, our ability to follow through with the train of thought, even things like our ability to stay calm, emotionally regulated, starts to go away. So given the time period we're in right now, we've got all of that going on. We're in a period of uncertainty, and we're in a period where most of us, I know for me, I'm looking at screens more than I probably ever have collectively in my entire life over the last 8 months, 9 months, more than I had over collectively my entire life. So I want to just, we'll get into what you can do about it, but I want you just to be aware those two things are going on for most people. Okay, so that's just the baseline. The secondary piece of science I want you to be aware of is that when we think about the collective of what happens when we're in our normal society, we get what we call diversity of connection. So we don't even recognize this, but like Peter and I were just talking about why we miss each other so much, because what happens when you're with people and things that you love, or even if you're in an office where you're walking around and you say hi to somebody and you laugh with somebody and you hug somebody, in the brain, endorphins and dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin boosts all happen spontaneously every time that happens. And collectively, that also charges our brain. What we've done is we've taken that out of our experience. For most of us, we're missing that. So if you add all that up, we're in a very unique time. People keep using the word unprecedented because maybe in the history of humans, this is the first time we've had this experience, given the way that we're set up around technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before when we had it, there was no technology. So we just weren't being with people, but we weren't being taxed by looking at people on screens.
Mm-hmm.
I want you just to be aware of the setup for what this conversation is about. All of us are challenged by those things.
So Joey, what do you think are the main strategies, let's say, to deal with it? Because, it's a fact that I'm not doing all those meetings in person anymore. I'm doing them via screen. So what is a regular person supposed to be doing with that reality? They can't just not go to a meeting because, oh no, it's too much screen time. It's you have to step up. You have to step up and deliver.
Yeah, no, it's true. And so what we've done is we've spent quite a bit of time looking at the research of the brain and looking at what do you do to mitigate against the impact of what I just told you. So there's a few things that we know work. There are 4 things that we know work for everyone. Doesn't matter who you are, these 4 things work. At the top of the list is sleep. You've got to get between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Doesn't matter who you are. There's only about 1% of people on the planet that can sleep 5 hours and get a full recharge of the prefrontal cortex. 7 to 9 will recharge your brain in a way that allows you to wake up in the morning at your best. And so those of you who think that you don't need that, I would say get tested, because the people that don't need it have a mutated gene that they could find. And they would tell you, oh, you can do that in 5 hours. For everyone else, 7 to 9 650 sleep clinics all around the globe. Everyone says the same thing, 7 to 9 hours. You have to decide what that is.
I just like to add it needs to be restorative sleep. It's not just, it's not fall asleep in front of the TV. So there's some ideal scenarios to ensure that that sleep actually restores us and it restores our brain. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, well, there's two things. One is you have to make sure you're not doing alcohol before sleep.
What?
Now, I know for some people, you're like, holy crap, you just took away my joy, right? I was telling this to some lady the other day. She was like, are you kidding me?
That's my medicine, right?
I've got 2 kids. I'm taking care of my mom, single parent. I'm working. You know what my joy is? My glass of wine right before I go to bed. Here's the problem. When you do that, it actually blocks your brain's ability to go into deep sleep. And so where you get restorative sleep, to Peter's point, is when you go into deep sleep. And that means, so if you think about a circadian rhythm, it's an hour and a half. So you start out in light sleep and then you drop into deep sleep. And in the deep sleep is where the brain really gets its real true recharge. And when you drink alcohol, for women, it's 1 glass. For men, it's 2 glasses. What happens is the sugar and the alcohol will metastasize. So you'll fall asleep right away, but then it metastasizes and it blocks your brain's ability to go into that deep sleep. And then you wake up, people say it's hangover. What it really is the brain did not get a chance to go into restorative sleep. That's one. The other could be caffeine. I say could be because for some people, if you have caffeine, let's say caffeine has a half-life of about 6 hours. If you go to bed at, let's say 10 o'clock, you don't want to have caffeine after 2, because sometimes caffeine has the same impact on our brains, not everybody's brain. So if you test it and say 2 weeks, no caffeine after 2, and you notice you're sleeping better, that's your indication. So those 2 things are important. The third thing is technology. When you look at your phone, if you haven't looked, there's a great, I was telling everybody on a call the other day with Latin America, a video called The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix. What they're finding is that when you look at your phone, the blue light on your phone tells your brain that it's daytime. And it doesn't allow your brain to produce the melatonin you need to get the deep sleep that allows you again to restore.
Right.
So you have to at least 30 minutes to an hour before bed, get all the technology out of your bedroom, take a shower, take a bath, read a real book, not an ebook, a real book,
right,
and let your brain produce the melatonin that allows you to sleep. And by the way, taking melatonin isn't your answer, because when you take melatonin, over time, your brain will stop producing it.
Right. There's a tolerance to it, right?
There's a tolerance to it, and the efficacy goes down, so it doesn't have the same impact.
Right.
So those 3 things help you get to sleep.
Possible best practice is to get glasses that filter out the blue light. It's still not the same as, ideally you don't, you're not in front of screens, half an hour before it's time to go to bed. But I find that these actually help reduce the strain on the eyes. I take them off during a live Zoom call like this, because it actually filters and you can see the blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are good practices.
So there's a question in the chat, Joey. Where do people go to get tested for their sleep?
You can do it online. Stanford has a testing system set up. You can do it online, so you can actually do a spit test. You don't actually have to go in. You can send it in, and they'll tell you if you have that mutated gene. So you don't actually have to go into a clinic and get tested. The other thing about sleep, this is just for the rest, some of you to be aware of, is sleep. They're finding when you get 7 to 9, it's like a dishwasher turns on in your brain.
Sure
And
is.
it washes out all the harmful waste proteins that accumulate throughout the day. When you don't get your sleep, those harmful waste proteins don't get washed out. And it's like stopping a dishwasher halfway through and eating on those dishes.
Yeah.
If you were to do that over a long period of time, think about the quality of those dishes. Well, the same thing is happening in the brain. They're now starting to attribute early onset Alzheimer's with lack of sleep.
Correct.
It's because the brain has got this plaque in it that's affecting short-term memory that comes from not getting enough sleep. So sleep has restorative benefits, but it is really critical for our longevity of our brain as well.
Is it okay if I share an idea?
Please.
I've been thinking about this productivity concept, and well, Joey, you're sharing with us some very specific things like sleep, and there's 3 others you're going to be talking to us about. I think there's an overarching one that has to do with productivity, and it's summarized in you need to slow down in order to speed up, because our existing paradigm, our push, our drive is to get more shit done, but that actually after a while becomes counterproductive to actually being productive in a sustainable and enjoyable way, right? So some people are like, what do you mean? How am I going to sleep 8 hours? You know, if I barely have enough time to sleep 5 or 6, right? So there's where you need to slow down in order to speed up. Yeah, and I know that it's going to apply with what's coming up as well.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of that is the idea that you're going to get everything done. I mean, you have to let go of that concept, because
right.
The truth of the matter is you won't. You never will.
Never right? will. And not only that, but it requires a slowing down to be able to gain the altitude to choose the most strategic things to focus on. You know.
Exactly.
You know, once I admit, okay, incompletion is part of life now. What am I going to ensure that I complete?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. So sleep is huge. The second one on the list is movement. What Stanford has found is that if you move 3 times a week for 20 minutes each, it has a significant impact on your brain. It's like the recharge that the brain needs can be handled in the 3 times of movement a week. Okay, so if you got that in and don't get anything else in, you get that in, your brain is going to be recharged. Now, your body might need a little more than that, but your brain needs at least 3 times a week of 20 minutes each of movement. Mm-hmm. So if you do that, it is one of the keys to keeping your brain, again, active, focused, vibrant, recharging the prefrontal cortex, etc. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, the other thing we talk about at Thrive, Peter just
let me just say one thing about movement, is that sometimes, I mean, I think for many people, they think movement means I need to go to the gym an hour and a half, 3 times a week, otherwise it's not even worth it. Right. When in reality, just walking around the block, you know, will do it. It's you know, just doing, you know, 3 squats, right? Whatever, just any movement. You know, one of the ways I heard it said the best is the version of you that walks around the block once a day is running laps ahead of the version of you that's just sitting on the couch all day without not even doing that, right?
I love that. And tied to that, a couple other things. So I'm talking about the brain, right? And talking about focus. One other ways that you can also help with your focus is micro movements. So I talked to you about what you need to do to recharge it, but as Peter just demonstrated, like if you take micro breaks throughout your day, what a lot of people do is, especially if you're working from home right now, you go from Zoom to Zoom to Zoom to Zoom. And what happens is, again, your brain starts to wear out. Mm-hmm. We found that if you stand up, even if it's 2 minutes, and walk, stretch, walk outside, get some vitamin D, breathe some fresh air, right. Take a 5-minute walk around the block, do, you know, stretches, a regular practice like yoga or Pilates or anything like that you do daily. Any of those things make a difference cumulatively in terms of your day. So if you stretched, let's say 5 times in your day, 2 minutes each between your calls, you will feel much better at the end of your day, right, than if you didn't. I mean, obviously that makes sense, but you feel a lot better. It's not just a little better, a lot better. Yeah. So if you add that to a 20-minute practice 3 times a week, you're physically going to be taking care of yourself, not just in terms of the brain, but in terms of the body.
Correct. Yeah. So we got sleep, we got movement. What else you got for us?
Well, the third one is actually pretty important. It's nutrition. and it's the one that a lot of us have sacrificed during this time period. What I'll tell you what Michelle Williams, the dean at Harvard Public School of Health, told me. She said, look, there's a lot we can tell you about nutrition, but if I were to tell people to do 3 things right now, 3 simple things, it would be this: reduce processed sugar. Processed sugar has an inflammatory effect on the body. And by the way, when your body's inflamed, it's less viral resistant. And if you look at research, almost all of the underlying preconditions to COVID or just to death is inflammatory related.
Right.
So if you can reduce processed sugar, and she said, and processed foods do the same thing. So you want to try, if you can just, no matter what you're doing right now, cut it down a little bit, makes a difference.
Right.
You cut it down a lot, that's even better. So processed foods, processed sugar. And the third thing, interestingly enough, is drink more water. Your brain is 14% more productive when it's hydrated.
Right.
And most of us are dehydrated. Now, in our world, a lot of us know about drinking water, but all of us are grabbing a glass of water across the board. But if you look online and you look at the difference between a hydrated brain and a dehydrated brain, you'd be shocked.
Right.
And she said, so drink more water. Now, the tool we talk about at Thrive is really simple. First thing in the morning when you wake up,
A glass of water.
Slice a lemon in it. Room temperature to warm. Don't drink cold water in the morning.
Right.
And what happens is the slice of lemon, it like alkalizes our body, makes us more flu resistant, right? But the water, hydrating ourselves first thing in the morning, really changes the dynamic of our system. What most people do, if you're a coffee drinker, it's fine, but you start with coffee. Coffee's a diuretic.
Right.
So you drink coffee and you're already dehydrated when you wake up. Now you're dehydrating your system even more and your brain even more, even before you get started. So the caffeine boost is an illusion because it goes away and then you really tank because your brain isn't at its best because it's dehydrated. So start with water, then have your coffee, but drink water all day long.
Yeah, and in January is going to be 6 years where that's the way I've been starting every single day of my life. And I've skipped it maybe less than 10 times. Just because I forgot or whatever. And I just want to say to people that okay, a glass of water, slice of lemon is ideal, right? Lukewarm. And if it's not lukewarm, then do that. And if you can't get the lemon, just drink the water. Just do the micro version of each of these practices, and you're going to be going in the right direction. And I just like to share some ideas that I think that really work for me in terms of hydrating properly. Is having the water next to your bed. Carry a bottle around with you all day, so it's just easier to take the sips instead of galashing, having my belly full of water with 2 gallons of water, whatever. And then the other thing is avoid buying sugary foods and processed foods. If you don't have them in the house, it's going to be a lot harder to consume them. So those are just like simple productivity hacks, I think.
But you have a plan with that too, because you might have them in the house, but if you have I forget the name, but let's say you have a cookie and you have something else, like let's say strawberries, right? If you don't think about it, you might grab the cookie.
Right.
But if you say today for my little snack, I'm gonna have strawberries.
Right.
And you already have that in your head.
Or blueberries.
The system's set up for it. So it's like, maybe there are cookies in your house, but think about what you're gonna do on those little snacks. If you plan ahead, you're going to be much better off.
I agree. I think just being aware about these things just helps us improve in those areas. Just being aware of them. It's like half of Pearson's law. Pearson's law is whatever's measured improves, and then if you report on it, then it improves exponentially, right? Yeah, even more. But just being aware and monitoring. For many, many years, I've known that I needed sleep in order to not get sick. Get the flu, get a cold or whatever. But after a couple of years ago that I went through a bout with cancer, it's been probably the number one thing I do every single day is say, oh, okay, shit, it's time to get to bed, or it's just really prioritizing that, because I know it's how important it is for my immune system and all of ours immune system. They're on the recovery period. Mhm.
Yeah. So before I go to the last one, I think just let's take double down on that for a second.
Mhm.
Part of what I'm seeing, and this is a challenge for everybody, is because of the lack of normalcy that we're going through right now. There are comfort things that we
Mhm.
might lean into that are cookies or whatever it might be.
Alcohol, alcohol. Yeah.
Alcohol is up about 400%, by the way, since COVID
Mhm.
began, alcohol
Mhm.
sales,
Yeah.
which, few of us probably say, I need a glass of something. But I will tell you, it's mindset, right? And we talk about this all the time at Insight. This is probably one of the more unique opportunities in the history of our planet for people to really prioritize self.
Mhm.
While we are working more, and there's evidence that says people are working about 40% more, which is
Mhm.
equaling about 3.5 hours more a day since this began. So they've seen a productivity spike, but it's been hours, not necessarily quality. Is that we forget that, like, you know what can I do right now? Now's a perfect time to meditate more.
Right.
Perfect time to get on an eating program that isn't distracted by the fact that you're flying around the world or you're driving back and forth to work. This is a time to really say, if there are a few things I want to do to take care of myself, what would it be?
Right.
And to really communicate that to others around you, get them involved,
Right.
support you with it, and take the steps that are needed to truly take care of yourself. This can be in a very, you come out of this thing. I was laughing with Ariana today. We were talking about don't waste a crisis, right? Well, let's use this as an opportunity to really make some of the positive changes we want in our lives.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that is to do with compassion.
Hmm.
Because at least, I mean, I've been through a lot of what a lot of people have been through with this pandemic, and one of them is, okay, I'm going to do what you just said. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to get tight. I'm going to do my P90X and whatever. And then after, and then I didn't get on, didn't do anything. And then that's a chance right there where the pattern of self-judgment and just punishment, of self-punishing and just making yourself wrong, or the alternative, which is to say, oh, okay, let me, maybe I aspired to too much. Let me just, you know, do less. I'll walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, two flights or whatever, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that was really interesting that I observed, is that I noticed that I started drinking more alcohol than normal, and I said, okay, I'm gonna cut this off. I'm gonna stop drinking alcohol for a month. It wasn't like a problem drinking, but it was more than what was normal for me. And what happened, when I stopped drinking alcohol is that I started experiencing anxiety, a lot of it. And I'm not, I'm very confident. I feel very secure in my family's ultimate well-being throughout this process, however long it lasts. But it was just interesting how it helped me realize how I had unconsciously started using alcohol as a way of self-medicating and diminishing the intensity of the negative emotions that were coming up, right? So one of the things that we often talk about in Insight is, especially in the old days, I know many of you on this call will remember, you chair is the problem, and how people deal with problems by avoiding them and fighting against their problems, whatever. And our recommendation is to sit in it. And that's exactly what I did during that month. And it was more than a month. I sat in it. It was like, okay, just explore, just allow this negativity to come up and come forth and just be observed, and any messages be listened to. And as a consequence, it just pretty much kind of dissolved. It's like kind of popping a bubble, or allowing a wave to come over, and then afterwards, it's enjoyable.
No, that's sweet, man. The science on this is fascinating, and don't even have time to get too deep into it. But I will tell you, one of the things that happened in our partnership with Stanford Medicine is we started understanding what we call biotypes. What Stanford did was this woman, Dr. Leanne Williams, she hooked up what's called an fMRI, or a functional MRI, to the brain. And what she did was she watched how people responded to stress. And in 10,000 plus hours of looking at that, she was able to see that there are 8 distinct ways that humans respond to stress.
Right.
She labeled each one of those a biotype. And every single one of us has what might be called a predetermined way that our brain is predisposed to a certain biotype. And those biotypes are fascinating because however they were formed in the course of our lives, they have very distinct ways of impacting us.
Right.
One of them, for example, is rumination. It's a biotype. If you looked at someone's functional MRI, you would see their brain light up in a very specific way in relationship to stress. And what a ruminator does is they worry. They worry about something ahead of time. They worry about it after the fact. It's hard to let something go when you make a mistake.
Right.
It spins in our brain. And that's just one of the 8. And I could tell you all the 8, but just giving you a quick summary.
Yeah, there's information on the Thrive Global website.
You can go in and understand it more. But what's important about it is that this scenario is going to trigger biotypes. It just will.
Of course.
Stress of uncertainty, as I mentioned in the beginning, unknowing, is going to trigger your biotype in your brain. Your brain is responding in the way it's predisposed to respond, whether that is through worrying, whether it's through avoiding, whether it's through going into fear. It's just predisposed in your brain. So having awareness that I'm just doing what I'm doing, as Peter was describing it, is how we sort of rise above the way that our brain operates. So the whole intent of this work was to understand how to not let our brain manage us, but how we can manage our brain.
Right.
And so what I'm talking about when I say move, sleep, hydration, and this 4th one I'll talk about is connect, is it actually interrupts the biotype. Regardless of whatever biotype you have,
That's right.
you do those things, it starts to interrupt your stress response. And that gives you power over the way your brain might, again, be predisposed to respond to stress. So connection's the 4th one. And again, I mentioned at the front, we're missing the diversity of connection because of many of us not having other people in our lives. And one of the biotypes is called anxious avoidance. I'm seeing a lot of people in these trainings that I'm doing are struggling because they've been with the same person or same people over and over again. And what happens is, again, another part of our brain is called the salience network. It's responsible for paying attention to the things we're concerned and worry about in our life. If you're worried about COVID and you're stuck with a group of people every day, you're going to notice that you start to get overwhelmed. And that overwhelm will trigger a part of you that wants to escape,
Right.
wants to get away, right? And so you'll see these kind of triggers happening inside of you, and you wonder what's going on. Am I going crazy? Am I stressed out? Am I overwhelmed? It's like, no. That's just how your brain works.
Right.
You can relax on that. You can have compassion with that. You can go, okay, it's just my brain's doing. What do
process,
I? So connection. I see Leslie's mouth moving, but because she's on mute, I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. We've got several questions that have showed up. Is it okay if I come in with a few of them?
You could, yeah. And there's a 4th thing I want to make sure I get to. So let's do a few of those, then we'll do the 4th one.
Okay, so why don't you do the 4th one and then I'll come back in. Just complete your process. Okay.
4th one is connection. So finding ways to connect with other people right now may be of all the 4, the most important thing.
Right.
Because we're missing that connection, diversity of connection. It's not that I'm with the same person every day. If I'm not having a meaningful connection with the person that I'm around all day long, it doesn't actually make a difference.
Right. So like relational versus transactional,
Exactly.
right? You know,
Where there's love and caring and tenderness
and
and
challenge as well. Even the novelty. Just not the same old, same old.
it's not the same old. And also just having to stop, observe, figure somebody out. Right?
Exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah.
That challenges our brain to work in ways that it doesn't have to when I already know everything about this person.
Right.
So what do I mean by that? So I know many of you might live alone, or many of you might not have diversity of connection right now. So my encouragement to you is find ways to experience that. By the way, you can experience it through technology.
Like now, for many people,
Yes.
I believe that's why we have over 340 people right now, is because of that longing for connecting with like minds, like hearts.
So you can do it that way, or you can find just somebody that once a week you connect with. So it's like, create safe zones. I know right now the world can be challenging, so find a way for you to be safe. But take a mask walk with somebody in a park. So you're outdoors, you're walking, maybe even you have lunch, you eat on a bench. And you say, well, it's cold outside. I don't care. I don't care if it's cold.
Well, it's good for you,
Take the cold, take the uncomfortable, but get outside, meet somebody,
Right.
and have a conversation. Unsurprisingly enough, when you look at the brain of all those things, that one thing probably stimulates the battery of the brain more than anything
Right.
else.
And I'd like to also just share with people, there's some misconceptions about what it means to be an introvert and what it means to be an extrovert. So introverts also have this need
Yeah.
for connection and relationship.
Absolutely.
And an introvert does not mean that you're shy necessarily, and nor does it being an extrovert mean that you're super self-confident necessarily. I've always been an extrovert my whole life, but as a child, I was extremely insecure and lacked self-confidence. And many introverts are extremely self-confident.
I'm an undercover introvert. People
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
I'm an introvert, but I
You
am.
know, It has to do with getting energy, recharging energy. Extroverts get more energy interacting with many people. Introverts get recharged energetically through, let's say, one-to-one interaction.
Yeah, they may only want one or two really important relationships, introverts,
Right.
but they still need it. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. You just need to have.
Yeah, and I don't think cats count 100%.
No,
They're good.
but
Pets are good for
pets are good.
oxytocin and stress
Pets are
reduction.
good. Pets are good, but I would encourage you to find one or two, even if it's once a week. Find some of that. I think you'll be that'll help you recharge. Surprisingly, maybe more than anything else. So
Yes.
make sure you're including that. So let me come back to Leslie now. I gave you the 4 biggies.
So I just want to write on what you just said, because I have been in so many insight trainings on Zoom where magic and connection and the depth of what you're talking about, and Insights being so generous, offering so many workshops and ways to participate. That wasn't a question. I was just moved by what you just said. So
that's part of the reason why we're doing that, by the way.
And I just want everybody to know, at the end, we're going to give you some details. There's going to be next week, on next Thursday, there's going to be another one of these connection moments. And we're going to be talking about an upcoming workshop, a virtual workshop, which will help you take this to the next level and have that insight experience remotely.
So the questions are, someone was asking, they love the science of the brain that you were describing from Stanford, and I don't know if it was Harvard, but the question is, where do you go to get that data? Because the person thinks it would be very useful for their clients to have access to that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is the first time Stanford's ever partnered with a private institution to take this kind of research public. It actually has been one of my passions the last couple of years, if you couldn't tell, working with them on this, because it's going to reset how people are thinking about depression, anxiety, stress, all of it. We have some of this information on our website, so you can go get that at Thrive. But
The Thrive website, right?
Thriveglobal.com. Thrive.
And that's where the biotypes are also located?
There's some articles that discuss it.
You'll look for articles. Leanne Williams will talk about it. Dr. Leanne Williams, by the way, if you want to just go straight to the source, it's very technical. But
Don't go straight to the source unless you're very technical.
I've distilled it. I've distilled a lot of this into layman's language, which is how I talk about it. But she's brilliant. She's a good friend. You can even watch her YouTube videos. It's long and it's very technical, and you might go, "What? I don't understand what she's talking about," or you might love it and get it. But if you go to our website, there's some free stuff there that we put together for first responders. It's part of our service thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and the second question is for you, Peter. You mentioned something about when you track, you improve, and when you report, it goes up. Is there any document or information you can point people to for that?
It's called Pearson's Law. Pear, it's spelled like a pear, like the fruit, Pearson's Law. And it's basically that which is measured improves. That which is measured and reported on improves exponentially. So I remember reading a really good book on health. It's called The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. And he mentions this guy that all he did was track calories, daily caloric ingestion. He wasn't doing a diet. He wasn't consciously he was just tracking it. Oh no, not even the calories. He was tracking his weight. That's what he was doing, is tracking his weight. And just by tracking his weight, he lost something like 30 pounds over the course of a year, and with no conscious intention to lose weight or to eat better, And I've seen it with myself, as I mentioned earlier, with the quality and hours of my sleep, just by tracking it, and it just improves. So it's just bringing awareness. As we also in Insight, one of the things we learn in Insight is, that what you focus on is what you get. And
self-awareness is often curative.
And self-awareness is curative, and energy follows thought. That's it, Leslie. You're out. You're muted.
Yeah, for now it is. I'm picking stuff out, but someone in the chat did say this, which I think bears repeating, that Insight's offering a lot of free stuff, giving it some, like this is just come. Yeah. Feel free to donate to Insight so they can continue to give. That's, if you're called to do it, because it's a nonprofit, it would be appreciated. So I just thought I'd throw that in. Thank you for ever put that into the chat.
Yeah, I'll tell everybody, we can always use those donations. Obviously, we weren't able to do anything live in the last 10 months, and we may not be live until the summer. The people I'm talking to from medical field think that that in the US, vaccinations and testing will get to the place by the summer where we will be able to go back to live in-person engagement. So we may be, until that point, we'll be doing things that we can do to just help people. But again, anything you can do to support us is great. We've taken, as I said, some of you know, we've taken really good care of our finances, which has been the transition and the translation of many, many years of Insight struggling. So the good news is we're okay. But anything that you can do to support us would be great.
Yeah, and we're okay. Just a shout out to you, Joey. You choosing to be a volunteer CEO and not taking a salary for all you do. So thanks for that, brother man.
Well, this work is important. And then the only problem is you have to deal with like Rossi and people like that. But otherwise, it's a good job.
You have to put up with Rositza Kusacheva. Speaking of Rositza Kusacheva, just so she doesn't threaten me later, there's going to be an Insight 4 in Bulgaria next summer. So
2021.
If you've been postponing participating in Insight 4, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah. So, and then, I would just say to people also, just on the focus thing, a couple of things to just be aware of. One is multitasking. I'm gonna mess with some of your habits. Many of you have the habit of multitasking with electronic media. So the University of London did a study. They were measuring people that smoked marijuana, people that didn't get a full night of sleep, and people that were multitasking with electronic media. And the people who had the greatest impact on their IQ were the people that were multitasking with electronic media.
That's right.
For men, it was a 15-point hit to your IQ.
A drop.
Yeah, for women, it was a 5-point dip in your IQ, meaning that when you're on a screen and you go to another screen and you go to another screen and you do that all day long, you get less smart, right? Plus, it's a 40% impact on your productivity. And again, as I was talking about earlier, it also impacts the prefrontal cortex. So just do your best to try and single focus during this time, meaning if you're on a call like this, be on the call. If you're on the call and you're sending an email and you're answering texts and you're bouncing back and forth, your brain is literally getting dumber while you're doing that. But it also, again, it impacts your ability to focus. So as much as you can, you'd be surprised. Focus on one thing, get it done, then do the next thing. The more you do that, actually, the better your brain is. So that's one little tip.
I just reminded of St. Francis of Assisi, that song, do a few things, but do them well, and there's just to bring it into the day-to-day, some simple things is take off the notifications off your devices, off the apps, off your computer, so you don't get distracted, because all those notifications are designed for is to interrupt your thought process and steal or hijack your attention, as that documentary you mentioned earlier it teaches us, right?
Yeah. The second part of this is, and I know some of you are not going to like this, but you got to reduce your screen time. So if you spend all day long working and you get off of work and you're on screens and you go watch Netflix, guess what you're doing? You're just going from one screen to the next.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things you can do is downtime, like literally like an hour where you're outside, just, reading or sitting outside or taking a walk,
Coloring
getting
book.
away. Yeah. Just not looking at technology of some sort. It's challenging right now because you were like, well, I would run around and work all day and then I would do my Netflix or my Instagram, or I haven't been on social media almost nothing for 8 months. Rosie called me, where you been? And I'm like, I'm doing 80 webinars a month. I don't have time to look at the other stuff. It's just going to burn me out. So as much as you can, it's addictive, these devices and these apps, but give yourself breaks from them. I know it's not easy, but it's a really important element to kind of get away from your brain constantly looking at some kind of a screen.
Yeah. And
so Joey, could you just repeat the 4 areas again that you just talked about? Someone requested quick review.
Sleep, movement, nutrition, connection. Yeah, those are the big 4. And then just giving yourself some downtime away from screens is important. And then be careful about multitasking with electronic media. All those things are going to impact your focus or build up your brain, right? When you're doing those 4 things, your brain is being recharged.
That's right. And then the thing about multitasking is, trust us on this one, people, it feels super productive. Subjectively, it feels super productive, but there are dozens, if not hundreds of studies that prove without a doubt that your output goes down when you're multitasking.
Significantly.
And women get away with it a little bit more than men do because there seems to be some different wiring going on in the brain, but they still pay the price. You women, you still pay the price of stress on your body, on your nervous system, if you multitask.
Well, the interesting part of that is when they were doing that study at the University of London, they found in women's brains the area that they think multitasks. They could not find that in the men's brain, which is not news to most women. If I'm eating and my wife asks me something, I have no idea what the hell she said, especially if I'm looking at TV. I can't do that. Right. But women could be cooking, you know, child on your hip, petting the dog with your foot, talking to somebody on the phone. It seems to work. But what happens is that part of your brain that multitasks, they found that every time you use it, it got smaller until eventually it went away.
Right.
And so it was designed, they think, biologically for childbearing years.
Right.
So you can pay attention to children. It's like anthropologically, that's what they think it's there for.
Right.
But couldn't find it in men. And it's the only part of your brain that gets smaller with use. So obviously it's not intended to be there for a very long time.
Right. Joey, I'd like to give more details of the upcoming events we've got coming up. If that's okay. Raj, can you share the information just projected on the screen for everybody? And so this is the first thing we want to talk to you about. This is going to be a 1 hour meeting, just like this one, with two wonderful, inspirational standard bearers, Marianne Somerville and Michael Connor, and one on each coast. That's going to be next Thursday, not this week's Thursday, but Thursday, December 10th. And it's free and it's open to all. And all you need to do is register. I invite all of those of you that are on this call that have taken Insight. You've got friends, family that have not taken Insight. Feel free to invite them to these. We're going to have 5 of these over the next. This was the first one. This is kicking it off. We're going to have 5 of these pretty much once a week on different days of the week because we need to coordinate people's calendars. So there's that one. Go. You can sign up right now if you want. Go to insightseminars.org/calendar and register right away. And show us the next one, please, Raj. And this one, Insight Ignite. If you know, one of the things that is very inspiring to me about Insight is being ahead of the curve. You know, we jumped to virtual. Rosi Kosacheva in Bulgaria, she did in-person. I facilitated a couple of these in-person Insight 2s for the participants, but facilitators, we were in our countries, in our home, because we couldn't travel. So we've been getting the most value out to the world using technology from day one of the lockdown. Joey, do you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Well, just, I mean, in Latin America, I mean, Gabby and
right.
started doing online at the beginning, weekly or daily even, connection points. And it's been, that's where we got it from. And so, again, while I had hesitation around going to an online virtual thing, because Insight's so much about, you know, people connecting, we're finding we learn through them, and we're now doing more and more of these. And I can tell you, people are having very powerful experiences. Maybe some people say even more powerful through some of these online connections. So this is going to be a great way to really teaching people, especially people who don't know anything about Insight, what we are, who we're about. It'll be very powerful in terms of some of the same energy of the Insight One. We want to really like create this global energy around this. We're coming out of this as we get back into live trainings. People will have had this as their launching pad into taking the Insight One sometime over the summer. So invite any of your friends, any of your family, anybody just interested. Again, it's much easier to do this virtually for people than obviously being in person. So this is a great opportunity to introduce people to Insight.
That's right. So people,
and the 2, yeah.
Right.
So we're doing it 2. So again, they've had to take me kicking and screaming through each one of these sessions. Started with an Insight One. I said, no, we can't do that virtually. We did it. It was great. And so now I said, but no, we're never going to do the Insight 2 virtually. And then now they've got me doing an Insight 2 virtually. So I believe this will be the first time we've ever tried it this way. And again, I think it'll be powerful from what we're looking at and how we're looking at doing this. So again, if people have taken Insight 1, they want to take an Insight 2, even if you've done it before, welcome to do it again. We'll be doing one February 17th to 21. That'll be virtual as well.
Excellent. I wanna thank you, Joey. It's good to connect, man. And
Yeah, buddy.
yeah, and everybody else is. From what I know from statistics, when you have a bunch of people register, you expect a small fraction of them to actually show up. We had close to 800 plus people register for this, and at one point we had 340, which is a huge amount of people that actually show up for a free event. So I want to thank everybody all over the world. I miss being all over the world, frankly, physically, and I'm just experiencing this moment as a seed for when I'll be in person, sharing same geography, time, and space with many of you.
It'll come soon, and I think for me the big part is just so many people on this call I know and love. Just a pleasure to get moments to say hey and to hug you and to love you virtually.
And thank you, Joey and Peter, for your generosity and your time and your wisdom and your caring. Also, thank you to all the people behind the scenes, the translators, the tech people,
Roger,
Gabriela,
Daniela.
Roger, Rossi, everyone who.
You, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie.
Take good care, and we'll see you all next week for our next session.
That's right, people. Be bad. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
That ain't much.
Thank you, Petya.
Thank you, Petya.
Yes, Petya, thank you.
We should have saw Petya's face, not your face.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Love you so much.
Thank you. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Marita,
Hey,
Rinaldo.
Rinaldo, Marita,
You guys rock.
Thank you.
Porcile.